This is Scott Spears, and I'd like to welcome you to another edition of Scott Spears Now. And recently, here in Ohio, a controversy erupted involving the Ohio State Commencement Speech 2024. The commencement speaker, Chris Pan, gave his speech, and let's just say there has been a lot of fallout since. That was about 2 weeks ago. He has now returned to Ohio to clear his name. So glad to welcome to the program and here to the studio in person, entrepreneur Chris Pan. Chris, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Glad you're here. Let's start with this. Here to clear your name. Why was it so important to come back, so to speak, to the scene of the accident to clear your name?
It breaks my heart to have people saying like I didn't take it seriously, that I caused embarrassment to their degree. That was not my intention, and I actually don't think that's what happened. I think there's a lot of different perspectives that people could have on it, and I just want to come back and share mine.
When did you decide and know that you had to come back?
Probably Wednesday or Thursday, only a couple days ago.
I
just tuned in. I was like, I really want to put a bow on this chapter, because to me, I wanted to move on. There's a lot of other things I want to accomplish with things, and also I want to come back and build on the momentum that I've already started. And so I've been having meetings with a few faculty members about initiatives around psychedelics and financial literacy, that I'm about to make a pretty big financial investment into the university.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Now,
so I want to both help clear up the misinformation as well as build momentum for the things I have deep conviction in.
How have you been greeted at the university since returning?
I haven't actually really been back to the university. Like, I haven't interacted with folks from, well, no, that's not true. One of the professors, or actually a couple of the professors, absolutely loved what I did, and they actually reached out and wanted to collaborate and actually want to put me in front of all the Fisher College of Business students in the fall.
Okay.
So that's one professor, and we're talking about doing a case study on my speech as a lesson in impactful communications, because I did have a lot of impact, right? And so we'll get to discuss good, bad, what could have been better, what were the things that did work well. So I'm excited to do that. So that's on the business college side, and then I just had a meeting this morning with the professor in charge of our psychedelic research center, and we're going to launch a big initiative to help educate the world about the healing power of psychedelics.
When did you decide you were going to make a financial investment?
This morning.
This morning?
Yeah, you're the first.
Well, here we go.
Yeah.
Do you mind, because I'm sure it's going to come out, do you mind telling us the amount?
At least $1 million.
$1 million to Ohio State?
To fund a program that will put into practice the four things that I care about. One is financial literacy. Two is the power of singing. Three is the power of setting intentions. And four is education around psychedelics. Right? These are the four things that I care deeply about, and it'll be the first of probably many investments I'll make into the university, and it'll be over the course of a few years. So I'm still working out the details, but I want to hire someone, probably within the College of Social Work, to help put all these things into practice. A 10-15 minute commencement speech, that was a teaser, but that's not enough to get people to really embody these practices. So I'm committed to these things, and I want to see it flourish here in the home of the Buckeyes.
Now, a lot of people, not to be cynical, but a lot of people will say he's making a financial investment of $1 million. That's a lot of money, and this is to clear up what happened 2 weeks ago. That'll be that'll be said by somebody.
That could be said. It also could be said that I'm just committed to this, right? And this is the first of probably other investments I will make to bring this to life. I mean, look at my track record. I've put in millions of dollars into other projects because I can do that. I've had the abundance from other things to the bracelets, right? I've funded over $1 million into helping that grow, and I don't take money from that. It's just a give back to the world.
Now, who have you talked to about donating this money so far?
One professor, Dr. Alan Davis. Yeah, we had a beautiful 2-hour chat this morning, and as we were talking, I was like, I think it's time. Actually, and the thing is, this will be my first monetary investment to the university. Everyone thinks
you've never done it before.
No, because in the past I've only given my time and bracelets. I've probably donated 5,000 bracelets, 1,000 at TEDx Ohio State, probably 3,000 at the freshman event, and then some others along the way. So to date, I've not actually made any financial contribution, but this will be my first.
$1 million. What do you hope this will do? You said what it will do for the kids, the students.
Yeah.
What do you hope it will do for you, making this an endowment, this donation?
It's students, staff, and faculty, and community members. So it's all 4 constituents. My hope is to help the mental health of the state. I've been appalled by the comments that I've been receiving online, and also the negativity, how much negativity there is. And when I see this negativity, I do my best to not take it personally, because I understand when people are negative, it's a reflection of what's inside them, right? Because a lot of people saw what I did and absolutely thought it was awesome. They sent me messages saying it was the greatest thing, and it was so joyful and so light, and they love seeing me so free because it gives them permission to be free. But there are other people who, if they have a lot of hurt and a lot of darkness, then that is going to reflect in the comments they make. And so I've never been more aware of the mental health challenges in our state and in our capital. And so I hope by promoting these 4 things, we will be in a different state in 4 years. Let's say in 4 years, right? More and more people will be singing on a regular basis. They'll be meditating on a regular basis. They'll have more financial literacy, meaning they're not spending money they don't need to spend. They'll be saving, and investing. And by doing so, they'll take out some of the financial stress that's being caused. And then lastly, hopefully they'll have an understanding that psychedelics, plant medicine, is different than meth, fentanyl, heroin, all that. And some portion of them might actually lean into that. Ketamine, MDMA, psilocybin, those are all proven healing modalities. And as in Columbus, I'm hearing more and more stories of people who have been working with this and have been very positively affected. So that's really encouraging.
Having a conversation with a professor and then deciding I'm going to give the university $1 million, is that something that you normally do, have a conversation, and in the conversation, I'm going to donate money?
I've done that in the past.
Yeah.
Like where I just, like when the light bulb goes on, it goes on.
And it went on this morning.
It went on this morning. I was deeply inspired by the conversation, and I just felt this little bird on my shoulder saying, it's put your money where your mouth is, right? And I'm like, you know what? I think it's time. I mean, I planted 4 flags on May 5th, right, around psychedelics. It wasn't even intentional. The psychedelics thing just happened because of the news. I didn't even talk about it during the commencement speech. But it was psychedelics, financial literacy, emotional wellness, singing, and setting intentions. I mean, you can't be more clear. I planted flags, as these are the things that are going to help us get out of depression, anxiety, divisiveness, loneliness. And so I can't think of a better place to, and I have abundance. I mean, to me, what's the point of having more zeros in my bank account, right? I want to build a better world, and that's what I've been doing for the last 10 years. So I'd rather see this money actually be able to affect change.
And this will be given to the university?
Yes.
Ohio State University?
Yeah, we're still working out the details. Most likely it'll be through the College of Social Work. And within the College of Social Work, there's the Center for Psychedelic Drug Research and Education. So it'll be in partnership with that organization, probably in partnership with the Fisher College of Business. And then in terms of the music stuff and the setting intentions, the music stuff, maybe the music school, I don't know. Like, literally this idea was born this morning, and we're going to figure it out.
Are you afraid of any backlash? Because part of this speech that got the most backlash was the psychedelic part.
Sure.
That they went back and looked at your LinkedIn and saw that you were on psychedelics, ayahuasca, when you were writing the speech. Yeah. And now that you're funding research on psychedelics, people might say, oh, this is a guy who's a little far out, and now he's funding research on psychedelics. And they go, well, here we go. Here we go.
I've been working with psychedelics since 2018, right? So for me, this is part of my spiritual practice. No different than someone who maybe goes to church on every Sunday, or someone who prays every night. That's their spiritual practice. And by the way, I do that too. I meditate every morning. Sometimes I'll do some journaling. I was bullied a lot as a kid. I'm still getting bullied, actually, because a lot of this cringe comments, they're calling me cringy. It's just another form of bullying, right?
What's been the worst? What's been the worst comment or part of this whole thing?
I think, I've been hearing cringy. Cringy is probably,
Cringy?
yeah. And I am not a professional singer, right? So it is arguably not professional. But I think there's a huge difference between, I'm not a professional runner, but I run, and you probably aren't either, but you run too. You're not a professional chef, but you still cook. Do you not cook just because you're not a Michelin star chef, right? So I don't know where all this judgment is coming from, and maybe we can take a look at that as a society is, why are we so judgmental, right? And maybe if we all just take a little bit of, just back off the judgment a little bit, maybe it would allow us to breathe a little bit, and then we wouldn't be so stressed out, right? So I'm okay with my whole, speech being hopefully an awakening for folks to start to just ask some questions, have some conversations. So the cringy thing is definitely, it stings. I'm an embarrassment to people, from Ohio State, I'm not going to get hired because of, your speech. And I'm like, wait, if there's an employer who's not going to hire you based on a commencement speech, you might want to rethink who you're trying to get hired by, right? I just hope that your 4 years was not dependent on a 15-minute speech. I mean, I'm sorry if you had a bad experience, and I apologize for that, but, they thought it was embarrassing. They thought, and then they thought I was self-promotional. And that part, I just think they don't really understand that for the past decade, I've been giving away bracelets to help people on their journey, and I've gotten countless, messages and tweets and Instagram posts telling me, they've been wearing it for the last 8 years, and in a moment of when they were really down, it really helped them. I can't even count how many messages I've received, because each bracelet I put into the world, or I help, put into the world, it's a miracle waiting to happen, right? It's somebody believing that something that's not in existence is possible, and their intention is to make it possible. And so I'm very proud of the work I've been doing for the last 10 years, and I think if you really dig in a little bit more into my background, you'll see that I don't even take money from this stuff. I put money in.
One of the comments that has come out about your commencement speech came from Ohio State University President Ted Carter, who was there, part of your magic trick that day. He introduced you.
Yeah.
And this is the quote that he's given since the speech. He said, "I did not review his speech. I did not know what he really was going to speak about. And again, it wouldn't matter because once he gets the microphone, he's got the microphone. It was certainly an interesting speech. I would say very non-traditional. There were some that liked it, and a lot that didn't."
Yeah.
That's the university president. Did you get that vibe from him after the speech was over?
No, after the speech was over, my family was waiting for me. So at the right time, I was escorted off the stage so I could meet with my family, because they drove up from Cincinnati. And, I got a nice round of applause at the end of my speech, right? It's on video. So I thought most people liked it. Maybe there were some that didn't, but most people, I thought, enjoyed it. I agree with everything he just said. The only thing that I might differ on is, when he said a lot of people didn't, I don't know. I mean, unless we run a poll of all the people, I just think oftentimes it's a vocal minority that's the most vocal. And a lot of times, news and writers, they need to be extreme to get the clicks, right? I even talked about that in my speech about clickbait.
You did?
And, if something's bad versus the worst, which one's going to get more clicks? The worst, right? And people will lean into it, and then people like to share things that are extreme. Otherwise, nobody shares average news. And so I just remind people that that's oftentimes the reality, and I really hope people watch the speech themselves and make their own judgment. And I hope people have the wherewithal to think independently and to make their own judgment, because a lot of people have watched it and emailed me saying, I don't understand what the hoopla is. I think it was genius. And I've got people saying, in 10 minutes, you gave 20 years worth of wisdom. Someone else says, you gave the most actionable graduation speech in the history of humanity. And I actually resonate with that, because I didn't want to do another platitude speech, follow your dreams, the world is yours, blah, 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 blah. That's been done. There's a million of those out there, right? I wanted to go in thinking, if my brother was graduating, or if I was graduating, what are the 3 things that if I did would actually change my life? And I didn't want to tell them about the S&P 500 or buying some real estate. Like, everybody knows that. What's the point of talking about something everyone knows? I wanted to share some new information that maybe they didn't know, right? And that's why I said, I think this, this might be polarizing. I just encourage you to keep an open mind, right? Great investors tend to be open-minded and look for things that are misunderstood. And all I said was, I think Bitcoin is misunderstood. I didn't say buy Bitcoin. I didn't say put your life saving in it, blah, blah, blah. I just said, I think it's really misunderstood. And I also said, singing is really underutilized, right? I just said some things to take a look at for your consideration. And people got really riled up over it.
Would you like to, or have you reached out to the president to meet with him on this trip?
I have not had a chance to connect yet. He's a very busy fella, and so at some point, when the time is right, I'd love to reconnect. I have deep respect for him, and I'd love to reconnect. I think there was also some controversy around this conspiracy theory that I was picked because he's on the board of a Bitcoin mining company, and I talked about Bitcoin. So let me just set the record straight. I only really got into Bitcoin in mid-February when I saw the ETF news, right? People think I've been in Bitcoin for 10 years and I'm holding a huge bag, when it was $100, etc. I wish, but I'm not. When I saw the ETF news, it was a huge light bulb moment because I'm a technology adoption guy. Like, I saw Facebook when it was just a college website, when none of the adults were using it, and my job was to figure out how to get the adults to use it. And it's all in removing barriers, right? The more barriers you remove to something, the more adoption it gets. So with Bitcoin, in the past, you had to have a hard wallet. And so you could lose your password, you lose your keys, and then you lose it forever. Then there are the exchanges, but then the exchanges might get hacked or there might be fraud at one of the exchanges. So I dabbled in 2020. I bought a little bit of Bitcoin on one of the exchanges, but I wasn't comfortable putting much money in it because I didn't want to put a lot of money into an exchange that could get hacked. The ETFs solve that problem, right? You've got BlackRock, the world's largest asset manager, Fidelity, the second largest. They're holding your keys for you. I'm like, that's brilliant. I don't even have to move my money out of my Fidelity and Schwab account. I could literally just sell one stock or one ETF and buy the Bitcoin ETF. That's genius. So I did that right away. It just made sense to me. And I often talk to my brother and my dad about investing. And so, of course, as soon as I saw the light bulb, I shared it with them. I ended up having a Zoom call with them a couple days later on like a Sunday morning. And I showed them all the research I did in a Google Doc. And my brother really enjoyed it and he got into it. My dad's like, maybe. And then I started sharing with, I have a lot of dear friends who are meditation teachers, therapists, people who maybe aren't that financially savvy. But I care about them a lot. So as a friend, I started talking to them about it. And next thing you know, I have a WhatsApp group with a few hundred people in it because they're all leaning in. They trust me because I'm someone who's not out to pump and dump, and scam on people. I have a reputation in that community as someone that's very trustworthy. And I have an MBA from Harvard. And I have, my background in Facebook. So I'm able to see things maybe a little bit before other people, right? I saw the power of Facebook before a lot of folks, which is why I was able to retire 4 years later. And so back to the conspiracy theory, the first time I posted on Instagram, a single Instagram story about me and Bitcoin was on March 2nd. I went back to my archive to look at it, right? And then maybe over the subsequent days, I started posting more and more stuff. I got my invitation to speak at Facebook on March 8th. So I'm pretty sure that between March 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th, they didn't all of a sudden stalk my Instagram story and see 1 or 2 or 3 Instagram story, not even a post. You look at my feed, right? Only very, very recently has there been some post that I'm tagged in on my feed that's about Bitcoin. But up until the commencement speech, my entire feed is all about singing and meditation, right? And so I'm pretty sure that that was not in the consideration when I was selected, that they had no idea I was going to talk about Bitcoin. I did it because I felt that financial literacy is important, and I just wanted to use Bitcoin as an example of keeping an open mind.
Do you know why you were selected?
I do. I asked the president the night before the commencement, because I asked all the people I knew at the university. I still know quite a few folks, and none of them said they nominated me. So, okay. So I asked the president, and he said that different years, they have a different theme. So maybe one year they want a former president, maybe one year they want a professor, maybe one year they want a celebrity, etc. This year they wanted a alumni. They wanted to feature a former student to show here's a path of a former student. And he said that my name was very much at the top of that list, like clearly at the top, which I'm not surprised because in 2018 I was on the cover of the Alumni magazine. I am a professional speaker. I get paid a lot of money to do workshops for corporations. And I've been on campus making bracelets for lots of students, and I've spoken in front of thousands of students, not tens of thousands, but I have spoken in front of 3,000 students. And by the way, in that speech, it was all freshmen. At the very beginning, I had everybody moving and doing the exact same moves, did a 15-minute talk, and then at the end, we sang Lean on Me, and then we sang Good Riddance. And afterwards, all the feedback from the students was, man, love the singing, thanks for the music, that was such a nice, way to end. Nobody talked about my speech, which tells me that we can talk at people, but people forget it. But when people are involved, when they use their voice and when they can create that vibration, right, that's what people remember. So that's why when I did my commencement speech, I really think of it as a commencement experience. I really wanted to have movement, a meditation in the middle, and then an outro song.
Now, Bitcoin itself, when mentioned during the speech, I watched the speech again this morning, it kind of gets, some people have said a boo, some people have said a groan. Obviously, you felt something happened at that point because you had said, I'm going to make sure everybody gets bracelets because of the Bitcoin thing.
I heard it.
Yeah. When that was happening, what did you think?
Wow. I can, 10, 20 years from now, there are moments I'll remember, and that'll certainly be one of them. There's a couple moments from that speech. I'll definitely remember the moment when I held the mic out and everyone was going, what's going on? So that was a cool moment, right? That happened. Yeah, and then the boo moment. Those two moments I will forever remember. I had a job to do. I mean, it hurt. It was not what I planned, but I had to keep going. And I actually skipped a line at the end of the magic trick just because I wanted to move on. I was like, oh, okay, I think, let me get out of this section. This was kind of a rough patch. We hit a major pothole and, but you got to keep going. So we kept going. Yeah.
The media has played a big part in this, and I think you feel, because we have spoken prior to this particular interview, about the part that the media played in this. You gave the speech, it happened. You say that day there wasn't any real negative feedback that you felt, but then give it a couple days, and there certainly was. Not even a couple days.
It was
a couple hours.
It was the Rooster, I think, it was the Rooster and Reddit. Those were the two places I saw most of the negativity come from. And I ended up, the Rooster ran a headline that says the worst commencement speech in OSU history or something. And I ended up reaching out to the writer, Max Littman, and we ended up on Zoom. And we talked. And at the beginning of the conversation, he apologized to me. He said, I'm really sorry. And I said, you don't have to be sorry because you were just doing your job.
Apologized for the article?
Yeah, the harshness of the article. I have both, I have a Zoom call with him and a Zoom call with the editor of the Rooster. Both, at the beginning, they both kind of apologized for being so harsh.
So they're not even really standing behind their own article?
Well, here's what Max said. He said, originally we were just going to write an article, a funny article, right? And then they saw the opportunity to make it more negative because they think they'll get more eyeballs. So they did. Max said he submitted one version of it, and then the editor added stuff and rewrote the title, which is what editors do, right? Because they make it more sensational. They make it more interesting. And I have it on video, right? And I literally talked about that in my speech, about don't believe everything you say or everything you hear.
I just want to stay on this for a second, though, because this is important.
Yeah.
So the writer says it was not that negative when I wrote it, and the title was not that worst commencement
I have
speech.
it on video.
Okay, so when you talked to the editor, which you say what did he say about that? The guy who did the editing of the speech.
I'm trying to remember what he said. We just had a nice chat. I have it on video. I need to watch it back. But, with him, I just cleared up a lot of the misinformation. I just, addressed it. And I'm not sure what he's going to do with the new information. I mean, maybe he'll write a new article. Maybe he won't.
What was wrong in the article?
For example, he said, I had worked with ayahuasca or drugs. And then he added a comment about, or maybe it was Bitcoin, I think. He basically just took everything and just added the most negative part. I think he may have added something about how Bitcoin is used to buy drugs or illicit activity. and then maybe like ayahuasca is, like a really bad drug. So he took truth, but would put like a negative spin. And so to someone who doesn't know, Bitcoin also is a huge savior for people to have a voice, because 4 or 5 billion people live in non-democratic, kind of oppressive regimes. I have a guy that wrote me, he's from Myanmar, and he says, you don't understand, Bitcoin allows me to share truth because I'm not worried about the government freezing my bank account, right? So Bitcoin also has a beautiful, positive effect on society too. That article just focused on all the things that could be negative, and so you can dissuade someone, right? It's like a debate, but it was a one-sided debate because that article was pure negative and it didn't have the other side of the story.
And the people who crafted this article, the writer and the editor at the Rooster, who started this whole thing rolling.
And then the New York Post picked it up.
The New York Post picked it up.
Yeah.
Both apologized for the article, but aren't...
Well, they didn't really apologize for the article. They just said, "Hey, I hope you don't have any bad feelings towards me." Right? It was more that they just
okay. So they not necessarily apologizing for the article,
but more just
upset that they're talking to you now. They don't want you to be angry.
They didn't want me to be angry at them, and I assured them that my goal with the call wasn't to yell at them. There'd be no point, right? My goal with the call was just to clear up some misunderstanding, to share my side of the story, hoping that maybe they would write a new story that clears up everything. But at a minimum, I have the whole Zoom conversation that I'll maybe publish on my YouTube channel. But they both they apologized, and to both of them I said, "You're just doing your job. You're a tabloid. That's what a tabloid does." And I just think as a society, we have to learn to be smarter about everything we read online, because the New York Post, all these things are businesses. They have to get eyeballs.
But
you don't get eyeballs by writing truth. Sometimes you get eyeballs by making people upset and like really,
But tabloid or not, obviously they've done some damage to you, and some negative comments have come your way because of it. A lot of negative comments. Do you look at how does that make you feel to have talked to the editor and the writer and have them say, "We're sorry we did this. It's a tabloid. Things were embellished. Outright things were said that were untrue."
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
And just to clear, the other thing I think in some of the tabloids, they kept insinuating that there was a conspiracy between me and President Carter. That was the other thing, right? Yeah. Zero conspiracy. Like, it's coincidence. And by the way, if two kind of smart people in the room both are into something, maybe it's worth taking a look at. Just saying, right? How do I feel? I mean, as funny, as weird as it might sound, I'm grateful for the opportunity to practice resilience, to practice loving thy enemy, to practice grace, to practice forgiveness. I wasn't expecting these as lessons to come about after my speech, but that's what's present. There's a song by the Rolling Stones, "You don't always get what you want, but you get what you need." And sometimes I think that is what happens.
Do you forgive them?
Of course. I mean, there's no point to hold a grudge, right? The damage is done. What's said is out there. But it also does give me a reason to clear things up and to, my intent, my project, our mission is to be a catalyst for meaningful conversations and positive action. So from that perspective, it's given me an opportunity to have these meaningful conversations with you, with NBC, with CBS, with other folks. And I think we're just getting started on these conversations. I hope it's a global conversation around, cringe culture, around bullying, around being kind to each other, around, just being thoughtful about how we use our voice, all these things. And in that context, they were actually part of the journey.
We're going to take a short break and come back with Chris Pan here in just a second, but we've got 60 seconds. On a scale of 1 to 10, how hurt by this have you been?
There's been moments of hurt, for sure, but I think I'm pretty resilient, actually. Like, I'm having to put into practice my own tools. I've had a decade's worth of practicing all these tools, that I have at my disposal. Sometimes I sing to release the sadness. Sometimes I meditate. I've been meditating a lot. Sometimes I just have to shift my own mindset. And so...
Scale of 1 to 10 with just a few seconds left to go?
1 to 10, like 10 being really hurt?
Really hurt.
Not that much. Like, I don't know, 3?
3?
4?
Okay.
Yeah.
3. We're coming back with Chris Pan, and we're going to talk about how he got to where he is today, and also talk a little more about the speech that got so much news. We'll be back in just a second. Scott Spears back with Chris Pan, who you probably all know from the 2024 Ohio State commencement speech, which has gotten so much attention over the last 2 weeks. He is back in Ohio, kind of to fix what happened. Came back to the scene of the accident, as I say, to try to work on what's going on, and he's met with some people down at the Ohio State University, and we found out in the first half that he is making a $1 million donation to the Ohio State University, and possibly donations after that. So that's news here. So we're glad that he announced that here. Now, Chris, that day, I want to make sure to get this in, there was a suicide, horrible thing that happened, same day as your speech. Larissa Brady, 53, apparently her daughter was graduating that day. She was there with her husband and young son, I think is what we've been told, and she jumped from the stadium. Did you know that had happened? Did you know this was going on, and what have you made of that?
Moments before I was going on, I was pulled aside and told the news. I was absolutely heartbroken. I was told to proceed as according to plan because there wasn't enough information of what was going on, and that the vast majority of people in the stadium had not known about it, and it just didn't make sense to make it known. And if anybody was to make it known, it wouldn't be me. I'm the guest speaker. It would be somebody from the university. So I was proceeding according to the original plan. I would love to know more what happened, because it's absolutely tragic and heartbreaking, and sending prayers and thoughts and love, and the mental health, I don't know, like I assume it's mental health related.
I think they had said that she had had mental health issues and maybe some suicide attempts earlier in the year.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't realize that.
I think that's been reported.
Yeah, I mean, if there's an opportunity to meet with the family or to just offer support, like I'm just another human wanting to support a family that's grieving.
It's just a horrible situation. Since this, have you been contacted about doing any other commencement speaking? It is the season.
It's funny. I've had a Michigan person, University of Michigan.
That would not make you favorable to the Ohio State people.
Reach out and said, hey, would love for you to come speak over here.
Oh.
Because we're more Bitcoin friendly. That was.
Do you think that's a jab?
I don't know. It made me chuckle, right? And I had another Michigan alum just reach out and say, hey, it's on my LinkedIn. I forget the exact words, but it was something to the effect that I know we're adversaries, but I just wanted to reach out and tell you that your speech was brilliant, and just keep going. And I just thought that meant a lot, that a rival would reach out.
Would you do it?
I would do any speech. I mean,
at Michigan at this point.
Of course, I would do.
No, but that's not going to go over well at Ohio State, because no matter what people think of that rivalry, that's an important thing for people.
I think here's what I didn't say in my speech, because maybe it would have been too controversial. Nobody in Ohio was born hating Michigan.
No,
and nobody in Michigan was born hating Ohio, right? And so there's a time and a place for rivalries, right? But sometimes I think we've taken it too far.
Well, right, but in repairing your image, I mean, the optics of that would be very bad.
I think I wouldn't do it right now.
Right.
But I think it would be amazing to have a Michigan alum speak at Ohio State at some point, and to have an Ohio alum speak at Michigan. I think the world needs more of that, right? The world needs more unity. The world needs to show, hey, there can be maybe a Palestinian doing something in Israel and vice versa. Like we need more of that.
Any other opportunities?
I just got booked to speak in Atlanta. That's why I'm here. I flew to Atlanta, and then from Atlanta I flew here. Literally, it's a bunch of founders and CEOs, all at least 7 to 10 figure, net worth folks. They had me do the exact same thing because they saw it on stage, and they booked me to do it, for them. Marriott's reached out. They wanted me to train up all their general managers in what I do. What else? Yeah, it's...
When we talked on the phone, didn't you say Harvard?
Harvard. I just saw the news that they are looking for a speaker for Class Day. I just threw my name in the hat, just, because I'm also...
So you threw it out to them?
Yeah, I reached out to them and just said, I'm available, and I have a lot of material that I haven't used at. I am a Harvard Business School alum, and so I'm part of the Harvard family too, and I would love to serve. I mean, to me, it's about service, and it's about getting the message out. So it's less about which place. It's more about just any opportunity where I can meaningfully deliver being open-minded, being kind, tolerating different perspectives, like these messages, I think it's what the world needs more of right now.
So, don't know about Harvard yet, and at this point, no speeches for commencement booked right now.
Nothing right now.
Okay, nothing right now. But you would if asked.
I'm available.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
People have asked this of me. Are you paid to speak at commencement?
No, zero.
No, zero.
Zero.
Okay.
I paid for my own flight to get here.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. So for commencement, you paid for your own flight.
Well, yeah, I think they offered, but I wanted to fly a bit more comfortably. They have, they offered a. Yeah, it's fine.
Because sometimes there are honorariums for commencement
zero.
speeches.
No,
so you were not
they
paid
took
at
care of my
all.
hotel. No, they took care of my hotel. I paid for my own meals. I got here on Wednesday. I took meetings all day. This is, to me, public service.
Okay, I want to talk about the psychedelics because this is where it all seemed to fall apart with the speech. If you had not mentioned prior to giving the speech on your LinkedIn that you had taken psychedelics, ayahuasca, while preparing the speech, do you think this ever would have been a story, even with the groans, even with the booze after Bitcoin, even with the singing, even with the magic trick? The psychedelics had a life of its own once they found that.
I guess we'll never know, will we?
We'll never know, but that became the story. That certainly
I guess
is.
we'll never know. And to me,
Why did you put that on LinkedIn?
Actually, originally I put it on Instagram first, and then LinkedIn. After I did the journey 2 weeks before the speech, I just felt called to do it. A lot of things come to me in speeches, in my ceremonies. At my second ceremony ever, at my first ceremony, I cried for about 2 hours once the medicine really hit, and it was, 40 years of pain and sadness all being released. That was my first journey. My second journey, I was inspired to help Skid Row, so I ended up writing a $100,000 check to feed the homeless in Skid Row. I was told to help a friend buy a home, so I wrote a pretty big check to help that person with a down payment. Like in these journeys, it's talking to the universe, right? And I get instructions on how to proceed. And
were you on psychedelics before you decided to make the $1 million donation to Ohio State?
No,
No.
I did that this morning, completely sober.
That was it.
Yeah.
Okay, because a lot of people will say that you are making these donations because you are under the influence of something.
Sure.
Or doing these things.
Sure. And I think it's beautiful to be under the influence of the universe, right? Because I think sometimes we're disconnected from love, from abundance. And so sometimes in these altered states, I will say this. Typically, people say, whether it's psychedelics or even just a retreat, right? Because I've been to many retreats where you're high, like naturally high from doing a lot of inner work. They typically say don't make any life-changing decisions within a certain amount of time. That's typical advice, which I do think is actually good advice. So maybe I don't necessarily implement what I learn right away, and I kind of have a cooling off period. But then, I literally have a notebook full of things I've taken away from these journeys, and I look back and I'm like, oh, this one, it's time to actually go do it. The donation this morning just felt very natural.
Do people who are listening to this might say a psychedelic is a drug, a drug is bad, and doing drugs is...
Let's peel that back, right?
Go right ahead.
Because coffee changes your brain chemistry. It's a drug. Caffeine. Alcohol, it changes your brain, right? It lowers your inhibition. I think there's a spectrum of, call it chemicals, right? Let's call them chemicals. And some of them can be very harmful, very addictive. Others, I think, can be really healing. I was at a conference where this guy on stage, it was another founder, CEO, entrepreneur conference. He said, you can meditate your way up the mountain. It'll take you a really long time. Or you can take the ski lift. And I said, wait, there's a ski lift up to the top of the mountain? And the backdrop was, at this point, I realized I needed a lot of healing. I had just gone through a rough relationship patch, and I was in this dentist chair where Tony Robbins' clip, heal the boy and the man will appear. And that just cut right to my core. I realized I needed a lot of healing. And then I hear this guy talking about a chair, like a chairlift. It's like, oh, all right. And then a couple weeks later, a friend reached out. I'm in Tulum. I get there on a Friday night, and then she's like, hey, tomorrow night, there's an ayahuasca ceremony. You want in? I was like, actually? Of course I was nervous, and I was, it's like going bungee jumping, right? You don't know what's out there. But I was like, enough of my friends have done it. I think I'm ready. I really want the benefits of the healing. And so I went into it, and it truly changed my life. And I've never looked back from November 2019.
How often do you do it?
It varies. So 2019 and 2020, I did it pretty frequently. I went through probably every month, every 2 months, I would do a different kind of ceremony, and it would be ayahuasca or psilocybin. And then I took a break. 2021, 2022, I kind of they call it integration, right? Because if you hang out at the top of the mountain, that's great, but you have to come back to earth and you have to put it into practice. So I had a cooling off period and just really integrated it. And then it really shifted more, 2023, 2024, for me, it shifted more into creativity. I started getting into producing music. And, as you know, John Lennon, as you know, Steve Jobs, a lot of, Elon Musk, there are folks that are well known to have worked with psychedelics for a creativity standpoint. And one of the analogies I heard was, imagine you're a skier and you're always going from A to B, right? And you can imagine that path is there's a deep groove. And deep enough where it's then really hard to turn because it's literally A always equals B, A, B, A, B, A, B, right? And having psychedelics is like fresh powder. Because when you put fresh powder, A can go to C, A can go to D, A can do A, B, C, D, E, right? You can get a lot more creativity out of it. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. And I've experienced the benefits of using, small amounts, we call it microdosing, for creativity. And so this is just part of my spiritual practice. And unfortunately, a lot of people don't understand that, and they lump it in with addicts, which I feel deeply sad about, and I want to help. And the irony of the whole thing is, not irony, but the interesting link is oftentimes plant medicines like ayahuasca, psilocybin, etc., can be used to treat addictions. Right? There's a lot of proof that actually these things can help you snap out of. What it does is, because addictions often come from trauma, and these things, when you heal the trauma, then the addictions can go away.
What has caused your trauma?
A lot of bullying.
Bullying for what? You've said bullying, but what were you bullied about?
I'm this Asian kid growing up in Cincinnati. I didn't fit in. I think there was active bullying, which is literally every name under the sun. Ching Chong, Chink, every name you can imagine I've been called multiple times, right? That's a starting point. Then there's the silent bullying, which is just not being invited to events, not being seen, not feeling part of everyone else. I lived with that all my childhood. I grew up in an Asian, with a Chinese family where we didn't have emotional regulation. It wasn't part of the curriculum. So there would be fighting. There would be a lot of fighting. And I had to live with that. And it was really, it was very hard to live with so much fighting between two people who they're loving people, but they just don't have the emotional skills to handle the emotions. I think a lot of emotions are bottled up, and then when it explodes, it explodes. And I'm sure I'm probably not the only person. I'm sure a lot of folks listening might be able to relate to that. When I was 36, I went to this place called the Hoffman Process. It's a week-long intensive retreat, 14 hours of deep inner work a day. And they talk about, we have a physical, intellectual, spiritual, and emotional, right? 4 aspects. And I immediately realized I spent all my life on the physical and intellectual, and I completely neglected the emotional and spiritual. And I was emotionally constipated, right? Emotionally constipated and spiritually disconnected, right? I have a spirit, I just wasn't connected because I was living in my head. I was always thinking about things, but I wasn't feeling. I was completely numb to the world. And so the last 10 years has been me connecting my head to my heart so that I'm a whole human. I was at another workshop. It was called Grace Revealed, and the teacher, the facilitator, kept saying, wholeness leads to holiness. And I was like, what does that even mean? And so finally I was like, oh, as I become more whole, as I'm a full person, right? My physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, that wholeness leads to holiness, which is this idea that, we're all connected and this divine, love and harmony and unity. So I think when people think about heaven on earth, or they think about the divine and whatever, all it really is just integrating all of us and healing the parts that are broken, and there's divine within all of us.
When we talk about the psychedelic drug world, however people want to define it, what other things have you tried?
Mostly psilocybin, ayahuasca, some LSD, microdosing LSD, MDMA and MDA. Oh, that's such a beautiful medicine. MDMA, I first did MDMA as like a 22-year-old, at the nightclubs in Prague. That was like a short stint with it. But it's a heart opener, right? And MDMA is about to be approved as an actual like a treatment this year. A beautiful gentleman named Rick Doblins, founder of MAPS, spent his whole life, over 40 years, getting this approved. And so I'm so grateful that he's done all this pioneering work. And MDA is a cousin to MDMA. MDMA is like you go out and you party, whereas MDA, it's sassafras, it's more like inward, and it's such a beautiful heart opener. And so when I was, sometimes I would host gatherings between two groups of people who were maybe against each other, and I may share a little bit of microdosing of MDMA, and people start to soften, and people start to see each other as humans, and it's not like, it'd be like, Ohio State versus Michigan, right? It's like, no, we're all humans, we're neighbors. Like, this is all like stuff we've been taught, but like, we don't need to hate each other. There's enough abundance for all of us to coexist. Think about how many places in the world where if we could just learn that lesson, we would have so much less war and so much more peace.
How did this Asian kid from Cincinnati who was bullied become a millionaire? What's the story?
I think I must have chosen this path, before I came into this planet. That, I don't know. I mean, I think on a practical level, I have to thank my parents. My dad is the best problem solver I know. He has this attitude that anything's possible, that you have to work for it. And so those values are part of who I am. So I'm persistent, and I recognize persistence too. Thank you for, being persistent. I'm like, someone's that persistent, they're probably like onto something. My mother's very loving, and she has a beautiful abundance mindset that, it's don't hoard your money, let abundance flow. And so I would give credit to my parents. When I was 22, I saw on the cover of some magazines that some people were .com millionaires, and it just resonated with me. It was like, oh, I want to be a millionaire, and I want to have financial freedom earlier than later. And not because I wanted to sit on a beach and do nothing. It was because I needed the freedom to do my thing. And so I was 29 and a half, and my goal was to hit that point by 30. I was a marketing director. I was one of the youngest marketing directors at PepsiCo, and making $200K a year. There's really good money back then, back in the 2006. But I was like, I'm not going to be financially free by 30 on this path. And also, like, selling sugar water, it's okay, but it's not my life's work. So I made the decision to eject. And so my life has been full of, I go up and I come down, I go up, and I'm used to the Phoenix, I call it Phoenix energy, So I destroyed my corporate career. And for the first 3 months, it was fun because I was trying all sorts of stuff. And then I realized, oh man, like, this is really hard. I can't do it alone. And then I had 3 months of a reckoning of depression. And in that time, I just had to keep asking myself, like, what is my dream job? What do I really want? The answer that kept coming back was Facebook. And I had met Mark Zuckerberg when I was in Harvard Business School. He was at the undergrad campus. He came to my dorm room. We had a chat. I was doing some projects for Friendster at the time. But he ended up in Silicon Valley that summer. I ended up in Shanghai, actually, doing a project for PepsiCo. And I emailed him. I messaged 2 other people I knew at Facebook, and none of them knew what to do with me, right? And instead of me giving up, which is the natural thing to do, I just kept stalking the news. And one day I saw this guy named Chamath Palihapitiya was hired as the VP of Marketing. And I just immediately went online to look for his email. I found his email at the venture capital firm, not the firm he was, not Facebook. And so I emailed him right away, and I just said, very concise, I think I can help you. Here's how I can help you, because I was a digital marketing director for PepsiCo, so I know brand advertising. And then here's who I am. Here's my background, right? McKinsey, Harvard, etc. And I got an email back a few hours later, and he just said, hey, great to hear from you. Send me your ideas in a PowerPoint. And so I spent the next 2 weeks racking my brain to come up with the best ideas that can impress him, because I'm sure a lot of other people wanted the job. And I gave it my all, and all of a sudden I send in the presentation, he emails me back, let's do a call, and I was able to get my way to financial freedom through Facebook.
A moment can change your life.
Truly.
Absolutely. And this is another moment that has changed your life in an interesting way. Does it bother you, and maybe you don't feel this way, but does it bother you because most likely the way we live now in the internet, and you'll be around for a lot of years, I'm sure, but that in your obituary, this will be mentioned now? Sure. This will be the guy who gave the worst commencement speech ever, unless somebody comes along. You never know. There are years to go. The guy who talked about Bitcoin and got booed. The guy. Yeah. Does that bug you when they Google your name? This is going to come up more than all the successes you've had. It's well, almost an irony.
Well, the story is far from over.
Right? How do you turn it around?
Well, I mean, I think I've always believed in just doing the right thing, and history will write itself. And I have deep conviction, in 5 years, Bitcoin will be worth $250,000 to $1 million. And we'll look back and be like, that was literally the best financial advice anybody could have gotten, right? We'll look back and we'll all be singing together. So this idea of singing is not going to be crazy. We'll actually be doing it. This idea of setting intentions together will be even more. It's already a thing. I've already helped tens of millions of people find their word and wear it on their wrist. It'll be even bigger. And psychedelics will be mainstream, just like many other things are mainstream. Just because something isn't mainstream now doesn't mean it won't be in the future. I'll just give you another example. When I was at Facebook in 2000, this is actually pre my time there, in 2006, Facebook was a collection of profiles, okay? There was no newsfeed. So when you logged on, you just went to your profile. It was static, so you had to then click on someone else's profile. It was kind of tedious, and you couldn't necessarily find the news. So then the team launches newsfeed, right? And everybody opens their Facebook, and it's like, wait, so-and-so did this, and people started panicking because they're like, what's happening to my information? And students, mostly Stanford, started picketing outside the office, literally picketing, right? And then they started a Facebook group to protest newsfeed. Over 100,000 users joined this group to protest Facebook using Facebook. I mean, the irony of that, right? And so that happened for a couple weeks, and people inside the office were like, oh my God, did we ruin Facebook? Did we just, totally mess up the thing? Of course, the rest is history, right? We look back, and can you imagine a social network product without a newsfeed, right? Twitter, LinkedIn, everybody has a feed now. And so I'm also reminded that sometimes when you innovate, when you do something new, it's met with a spectrum of responses, right? Because anytime you have innovation, there will be the people that lean in, and I've got more love messages in my inboxes than I've ever received. People think I'm a genius from around the world. People think I'm courageous. People think I'm just, given the greatest speech in the history of speeches. Then you'll have a middle section, like we talked about earlier, who honestly are kind of ambivalent. They're busy with their life and whatever. And then you have a minority. You have another group who are very vocal and who don't like it. They don't like change. They just don't want things to, But that will change over time. And so I don't lose an hour of sleep worried about my obituary. I'm also the person who oftentimes when I give a workshop, I don't even say my name. I just get up there. I'm very clear on my mission. My mission is to help connect people with their intention. My mission is to help people open their voice, right? My mission is not to tell you how great I am. My mission is not to tell you that I've accomplished all these things. That doesn't make me interested. I'm bored of talking about myself. I'd much rather help you learn about yourself. So if you look at the commencement speech, I had to put in a little bit about myself because that's just what you kind of have to do, just to acknowledge your parents and all that. So I did that. But most of the speech was me giving tools to people because I want them, my assignment as I understood it, a graduation is backwards looking and it's about the past and celebrating the past, right? Commence means to begin. And so a commencement is to prepare these graduates for the rest of their lives. So as I understood the assignment, I wanted to prepare them for financial freedom, for emotional freedom, and for spiritual freedom, because that will create harmony in the world. And that's the world I want to live in.
Now, for people, because we live in the now right now, for people who are watching this and seeing this now, for everything that you said could happen in the future, and that's why we'll look back on this moment
Yeah.
and think he's a genius.
Yeah.
Who are hearing that now and going, he's nuts. That's never going to happen.
I'm a
He's
Buckeye.
crazy.
Buckeyes are nuts, by the way.
There you are, Buckeyes.
All right, we're all nuts.
This guy's nuts.
I'm a true Buckeye because I'm nutty.
But what do you say to that?
Yeah, I just think, give it time. And I'd also like to, if you're open to it, I'd like to get underneath the criticism, get underneath the cynicism. I was having conversations with someone, and he was saying, the reason why we don't like Bitcoin is because and I think that person actually said Marion. He says, I think in Marion, there's a lot of scams. And so we're always wary of scammers and being scammed. And so, I'm sorry that you've experienced that. But just because you've been scammed by whatever, be cautious, but also don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? Somebody might genuinely be here to give you good advice and to actually help you. And by the way, I'm not telling you to do any of these things, but I'm just saying look into these things. Take an hour, and maybe at the end of the hour you realize, actually this is BS. Forget it. That's okay. But just be open-minded enough to do a little bit of homework and do a little bit of research and just be a little bit open-minded.
We know about your childhood. We know your career. We know about the commencement speech for sure. We know about how you feel about certain things. What don't we know about Chris Pan? What's the big secret? What don't we know? Tell us something we don't know.
I wake up just like you. I meditate. So that's one thing that, if anything, I wake up usually at 5 a.m. I'll meditate for 20 minutes. The first thing I do, I usually go to the restroom real quick, get back in bed, and I just sit there and I put on a timer and I just spend a little bit of time connecting to my own truth and to myself, and I sort of, set an intention for the day. That's something that, I hope people take away. I'm someone who's had many dark times. I'm someone who, my life has been a series of ups, some downs, some ups, some downs.
How bad has it been?
There have been moments when I look outside from a tall building and I'm like, yeah, maybe I should be there. I've had those thoughts, right? I didn't do it. And I'm lucky I have, supportive friends. I have, my parents. I have folks who, they see me struggle and they come to me, and it's actually, even the last 2 weeks, Professor Davis, actually, I met with him this morning, and he's like, hey man, I'm worried about you. Are you okay? And because you're getting a beating, you're getting lashed, right? You're getting crucified out there. And I told him, I deeply appreciate your care and your concern, but I'm okay. I've been training for this moment, and I can, shift my perspective. I have the tools, but I have people who care.
So there have not been those moments in this episode?
Not in the last 2-3 weeks. I'm fine. I'm not saying that it won't happen in the future, right? Because you can't predict, and I think life is just a series of ups and downs, and that's what makes for a great movie, right?
What stops you from being on a tall building, looking down, and thinking about jumping? What stops you?
I think at this point in my life, I have a deep, deep sense of conviction in my mission. It took me a long time to figure out why I'm on this planet. At this point, I think my shirt says it pretty well. I'm here to serve. I'm here to share love. It might show up in ways that people don't expect, but I'm clear who I am, and I'm clear what I'm here to do. So I'm in it.
There are a couple things I want to go through here, and we're going to hit the end of the tape here. So I want to stop just for a second, take a break. We're going to come back and wrap up with Chris Pan, because I want to ask you about something going on in the news right now. Mm-hmm. And then I also want to get to music before we wrap up, because that was such a big part of the speech.
Oh yeah, I should actually get my ukulele out.
I noticed you brought the ukulele with you, so we're going to
get that tuned up.
We'll have a little music.
And then I want to talk about Dr. Davis one last time.
One last time, absolutely. We're going to take a quick break, come back with Chris Pan and the music performance right after this. Hey, we're back. Chris Pan is the guest, and we're talking about OSU and the big commencement speech that happened about 2 weeks ago now that got all the attention, but talking about a whole lot of other things. And one of the things I want to get in here before we run out of time is what everybody's talking about. Now, they say Ohio used to be a swing state. We love to talk about politics. I guess we're not considered a swing state anymore. I guess we're considered more to the Republican side at this point. But regardless, we're surrounded by a whole lot of swing states. You have, obviously, some money. You have a voice that's heard. Biden or Trump here. 2024. Just a few months away. Who do you throw your support behind? Now, don't waver on the fence with me. Give me an answer.
Still figuring that out.
Which way do you lean more?
It's a hard one.
Why is it hard?
I just think we need new leadership. I think we need someone that's more uniting, less adversarial, someone that can really embody bringing people together and really solving the problems that we're in. I just think we need a fresh perspective. So
But these are the choices. These are the choices. If you had to vote today, who would you vote for?
I don't know. I really don't know. There are things on both sides that I'm not a fan of.
Here's what people who are watching this would probably say, this is a liberal guy. This is a guy who probably supports LGBTQ rights.
I do.
This is a guy who probably supports a woman's right to choose.
I do.
This is a guy who probably, clearly, deals in psychedelics.
Yeah.
This is obviously more toward the beliefs of President Biden, even if you don't like him or think there should be new leadership.
I think that's accurate. I think that part's accurate. But there are also things that are happening there maybe I'm not a fan of. And I just think in general, we need a fresh start for the country. I think we need someone that really comes in and just, we just need to start again.
So will you sit it out?
I don't know. I mean, I'm the kind of person who, I decided to come to Ohio on Wednesday.
You're a spontaneous guy.
Yeah, I think a lot can happen between now and November. I mean, who knows if Trump will even be in the running? We just don't know, right?
Would you ever run for office?
I may. Who knows? Anything's
You could run
possible.
for president at this point.
I wasn't born in the country unless they changed the amendment.
Oh, well, there you go. That's right.
If they change...
We got those laws.
If they change that, then anything's possible. But I also don't think I'm going to be good in that role. I think I'm good at other things. And I'm definitely, I would love to be friends with the president. And I would love to help do special projects for the president. But I'm not clear that, I'm a little bit of a non-traditional guy. Let's be real, right? Yeah. So I may not be the best fit to be in that particular office.
Okay. What do you make, we talked about Biden, what do you make of Donald Trump, former President Trump? To be fair.
I can understand where he's coming from on some things. I think I just don't like the divisiveness, right, between both of them. I think there's so much divisiveness. There's very little effort towards actually listening to each other and extending an olive branch. And that's why I don't like either of them. I want to see leadership that actually is breaking bread together, is actually coming together to find a middle ground. And there's none of that happening right now. And I don't like the fact that, he didn't respect the democratic process with what happened on January 6th. Obviously that was a big, red flag.
Is there a politician you like? Any?
I think, Pete Buttigieg, Andrew Yang, there's some of the younger folks who I don't know that much about them, but I think they represent new hope and new ideas. And we don't live in, we have AI here. We have cryptocurrency. We have all sorts of new technologies, and we're not really embracing that. We're fighting it. And so I think we need a fresh perspective. There's lots of younger folks that I'd love to see emerge and take us into a new era.
You want to talk about Professor Davis again?
Yeah. There's a Center for Psychedelic Drug Research and Education in Bricker Hall on the first floor. It's in the College of Social Work. And I believe that could change the world, that center. And most people don't know about it. Most, folks have no idea that exists there. He was trained at Johns Hopkins. He came to the university, not originally to do psychedelic. He wanted to do psychedelic, but the original post that was created was to do social work, right? And the initial grant he did was around helping veterans with PTSD, using psilocybin, I believe, or using psychedelics to help treat veterans with PTSD. The second study was around helping cancer patients who are very, very depressed, right? You can imagine somebody that's diagnosed with late-stage cancer has no hope, but there's a lot of proof that psilocybin and other psychedelics give people hope, and actually some people recover, right? Because when you have hope, you have that ability to transcend the disease. And then third is working with minority and ostracized populations, right? To help them heal. Because those populations oftentimes have had very negative experiences with institutions, and psychedelics could be a huge help, but also could be trauma. It could have a lot of baggage with it. So I'm super excited about the future that as that center grows, and that's actually where my investment is going to come through, is through that. One of the students who graduated on May 5th, she did her PhD, her dissertation, on ayahuasca and resilience. She studied a bunch of folks who went to retreats in Peru to understand, did it actually help them? And it did. She herself has never taken ayahuasca, so she comes at it purely objectively as a researcher. And she now has a professorship at the University of Utah, and she'll continue to do ayahuasca research there. And she's one of a handful of people that are doing that. And so I just want to, encourage folks who think ayahuasca is this crazy thing, that actually, our university is on the cutting edge of this research. And it is my best, it gives me hope that we could have a better future as more people use it to heal themselves.
Want to run through this because your speech certainly has taken the cake this commencement season, so to speak. But some other people are getting into some trouble here, giving their commencement speeches. And I just wanted to get your opinion on these. I'm going to read these just so I don't misquote anybody. But there are deep divisions and apprehension on the campus of Morehouse College, as President Joe Biden will give the commencement speech there. It's traditionally a historically black all-male college. There have been mixed reactions within the Morehouse community to Biden's presence on campus as the school braces for an enhanced security measures as potential pro-Palestinian groups protest amid the president's stalwart support for Israel's campaign against Hamas. So what do you make of that commencement speech problem coming up?
I think commencement speeches are just conversations, and there is a real problem happening in the Middle East right now. And so I think, having attention around things that matter, it's unfortunate because it is also a celebration of the graduates' achievements. So I do want to make sure that is also honored. At the same time, these are pivotal moments, and, I don't have much insight into the details of it. Is it more you want feedback, or you want thoughts?
Just what you think. That one hasn't happened yet, so that's not so much feedback from President Biden's speech. That's people worried about.
I would just encourage people to be open-minded. I would encourage people to just roll with it. If there is people screaming, if there is people waving a flag, take them. Put it this way: when I was on stage, I was prepared for protest, right? And in my mind, if somebody started yelling something about Gaza, something about Palestine, whatnot, I would just take a moment and I would just send love out to the people, because people are hurting. Like, it's real. We're humans, and it's okay to take a moment to acknowledge that there is suffering and there's pain, and even in the greater context of a celebration, it's okay to take a moment and just acknowledge.
This one's gotten maybe at this point as much attention as yours got. Harrison Butker's commencement speech last week left some graduates at the college he spoke at in Kansas outraged after the Kansas City Chiefs kicker asserted that one of the most important roles for women is being a homemaker, and that Pride Month is an example of a deadly sin.
I watched the speech, and I didn't get triggered per se. I just thought he was sharing his truth. As I talked about in my speech, it's okay to have different perspectives. I may not agree with it, but I don't think we need to yell at him or we need to bash him. I just think he's speaking his truth to an audience that actually might embrace that truth, and we can certainly hold a different perspective. And by the way, I actually think raising a family is a hugely noble thing, just as much as being the CEO of a company, right? So I think they're both equally great, and it's okay, to choose one and the other, or one or the other. It's all okay. And let's not be so critical of people. Let's just embrace that we can have multiple truths.
Another quick one here. Super Bowl champion Travis Kelce delivered a graduation speech. I believe this was University of Cincinnati, down in your neck of the woods, with a beer in his hand, and that didn't go over very well. Well, maybe it's a bit better greeted than.
I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, but I guess he had a beer in his hand.
Okay, and what was the feedback? People just thought he shouldn't have, or
Some people have said not good. You know what they're saying now? They're contrasting it with Butker's speech because he's a football player, and they're saying he's getting all the heat for saying this about the deadly sins and so on and so forth.
Sure.
But yet Travis Kelce can have a beer in his hand during commencement and nobody says anything, which is kind of ironic because your story became a great deal about ayahuasca and got a lot of attention, but his beer had no problem.
I guess I'd want to understand the intention because I haven't seen it, so I'll go watch it.
Yeah.
I'd love to ask Travis, why did you have a beer in your hand? What was the message, right? And depending on what his intention was, then we can have a conversation around it. But for me, let's stop judging people based on our perception of the intention. Let's actually have the conversation, And by the way, back to the point around a sin or whatnot. I don't agree with that, because I'm much more for letting people be. But if that's his belief, then that's his belief. And, as long as he doesn't do anything that hurts other people, and, let's find a balance between each person's belief and our, individual belief to freedom. I think, like I said in my speech, harmony is recognizing there are multiple paths up the mountain, and let's just respect each other a little bit more and just let's all learn to coexist.
Let's go, a few summing up questions here. Let's go back to the moment before you wrote on LinkedIn or Instagram or wherever it came from first that you had done ayahuasca while writing the speech.
Yeah.
From that moment to this, everything that happened, the speech, the fallout, the calls, the returning to Ohio to clear a lot of this up, what would you do different, if anything? Would you have put that on Instagram? Would you have given the speech you gave? Would you have mentioned Bitcoin? Would you have done anything differently, knowing what you know now? Hindsight's 20/20.
Maybe not. I mean, maybe everything is happening exactly the way it's meant to happen. I will say my intention was never to upset anyone. That is fact. My intention was never to cause people to be angry or divisive, or that was never my intention. So, actually, okay, I take that back. Knowing what I know now, then maybe I should have mentioned ayahuasca later, right? Because I didn't want to trigger people. I didn't want to make people upset. So that's possible. But I think sometimes let me just share. Let me just close with a story.
Okay.
And this is a classic parable. There's a farmer, right? Has a son and has a horse. The horse runs away. And all the neighbors say, "Oh, we're so sorry you lost your horse." And he says, "Perhaps," right? And then the next day, the horse comes back with 2 wild horses. Neighbors are like, "Oh my God, that's so great." They flip their story, right? Congrats. And then the farmer's like, "Well, perhaps." And then the next day, the son rides one of the wild horses out and breaks his leg and then comes back. And then the neighbors are all like, "Oh, we're so sad, we're so sorry." And then the farmer, of course, says, "Perhaps," right? And then the next day, the army comes to try to draft his son, but because of the broken leg, he wasn't drafted and likely saved his life, and all that, neighbors are applauding now, right? So you could see the neighbors are flip-flopping literally based on, the news. And of course the farmer says, "Perhaps." And so I share that story a lot in my workshops as a reminder that we don't know what's ahead, and maybe having the headline of the worst commencement speech ever will be such a gift down the road. I don't know, right? And we'll just have to see.
Biggest misconception about you?
That I didn't care about the speech, right? That I made it a joke, which is absolutely not true, because when I first got the email, the email said, invitation to OSU commencement. I get emails from the university. Most of the time it's for development reasons, fundraising. I also have my Harvard Business School 20-year anniversary coming up in June. So I just thought, it's been 25 years, they were just getting some alums together to do a little reunion. That's what I thought it was. The email came in on a Friday morning. I read it on a Friday night. I was multitasking, a lot of stuff going on. Read the subject line, the first sentence, put it away. The next morning, my dad says, "Hey, do you want to come back to Ohio? We're selling the house where I grew up." I said, "Oh, I just got invited to," and thank goodness he actually said something, because there was a chance I didn't even go back to the email, just because I get a lot of emails, right? And it didn't say in the subject line, "We want you to speak at commencement." If that would have been the subject line, of course it would have been a different conversation. And I read the second sentence, which said, "And we want you to be the featured guest speaker." And I was like, wait a second, is there a plural speakers? Is it like one of the like smaller, and it said like for 12,000 graduates and their families, and I'm like, whoa. So I texted two of the staff, and I said, is this what I think it is? Like, OMG, is this what I think it is? And they texted back like, yes, like, did you accept? And I was like, whoa. And I literally wrote back like, I'm crying. I literally was crying like most of that day. I knew, like, obviously what a huge honor it is. I'm not LeBron James, or I'm not some crazy celebrity. Like, for me, it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. So from that moment on, I literally started writing notes to myself of ideas, right? I could say this, I could say this. I thought about the line about Michigan. Hey, nobody, in Ohio was born hating Michigan, right? That didn't make it into the speech, but, I was brainstorming. Not everything that brainstormed got in, right? And then, of course, I used multiple ceremonies, mushrooms and ayahuasca, to brainstorm and to really, like, not just brainstorm, but also energetically just get myself into a space where I can have conviction to tell 70,000 people what I believe is true. I mean, it takes a little bit of courage to just get in front of 70,000 people, right? And it would have been challenging enough just to say, go follow your dreams. You guys did great. Like, even that speech would have taken a lot of courage. But to then on top of that, get them to sing, get them to meditate. People accuse me of saying, oh, you didn't, give us any life lessons about whatever. And I was like, give you life lessons? I showed you authenticity. I involved you in authenticity. I involved you in what it means to follow your own path, in doing it authentically, in having courage. If you look at it from a little bit of a zoomed out point of view, there were a lot of lessons, to the point where actually the head of the honors cohort at Ohio State University, who also teaches the Intro to Business course for all the incoming Fisher students, he wants to take my speech and turn it into a case study of impactful communications, right? So I'm actually really excited that my speech will now be part of the curriculum for Fisher College students.
Were you on anything when you gave the speech?
No, I was just me.
No, okay. Yeah. Finish the sentence. Chris Pan is?
A loving, empathetic, and desirable man, bringing healing, inspiration, and purpose to the world. And that loving, empathetic, desirable, healing, inspiration, purpose, that came to me at a workshop I did. It was a multi-day workshop where by the end of it, we went through a really intense process. It was actually 2 workshops. The first workshop, loving, empathetic, and desirable. The second, a different workshop, healing, inspiration, purpose. And that gave me a lot of clarity of who I am. And I would encourage folks who are listening to do some workshops, or to do some journaling, do some exploration, so that you can also finish that sentence, right? I think that's a beautiful question, is who are you, right? And to be able to have that clarity, and and those are 6 things that I've had to work at. It wasn't like I was born being a loving person or empathetic. Like, I struggle with empathy, and I still struggle with feeling desirable, because as an Asian American man, like, we're not exactly viewed as Hollywood's leading man. Like, how many Asian American leading men are there, right? I'm being called a clown on stage. And so there's still work to be done, but this is where I'm going. This is my North Star of me as a human in this lifetime.
Is there any way this can be seen as good?
This whole chapter?
This whole chapter, this whole thing.
You tell me. I mean, what do you think?
It's interesting. I don't know, because I'm not in your shoes, and I think you have to walk through this. I don't.
I think this could be absolutely great. I think it could be beyond good, right?
But it could be bad as well.
It could be.
So far, it hasn't been great.
It's been okay. Well,
okay.
Sorry. So far, it depends on who you talk to.
Okay.
I've got so many messages of people saying, wow, what you did is inspiring me to follow my dreams, is inspiring me to take a risk. So it's, the ripples are already happening, right? Sure, some reporting has been negative, but there's a whole lot of other things that are happening. I'm actually going to put it on my website, all the positive messages I've been getting, because I think that's also fair. If you're going to read all the negative, then let's look at all the positive too. I think what's the most important out of this whole thing is, what are the lessons? What are the learnings we can have? And I think there are so many, right? Can we learn to listen to each other, right? I didn't say go buy Bitcoin. I just said, hey, it's really misunderstood. Even the Bitcoin community, I love them, but they're literally posting, Chris Pan told everyone to buy Bitcoin. I'm like, no. Like, you're not listening to me. Like, let's learn to listen to each other, right? How about open-mindedness, hearing each other's perspectives, like, and also not believing all the tabloids, not believing everything. Really, there's a bunch of lessons that if people are willing to lean in, this whole speech, this whole moment is filled with learnings that will help us have a more harmonious society.
I want to end with a song because that's been a big part of this, music and what it does for you and what it can do for other people. And you've got your ukulele, so we're going to end with a song here. But I got to ask you this question because people who have heard this whole interview now and have read all the articles and all the press that's been around this will say this. There will be people, and maybe it's the minority. I don't know if it's the majority or the minority, but people will say, and forgive me, they'll say, Chris Pan is somebody who's on psychedelics. His brain has been altered because of it. He is just a reactionary person. He gives money to people that he shouldn't give money to people. He is hippie terminology, all those things that go into this. He's just not in his right mind. What do you say to those people?
I love this question. I've been brainwashed, and I hope everyone else gets brainwashed. Brainwashing just means, to me, washing ourselves of the things that are causing us glitches, right? The way you think about an iPhone. It has hardware, it has software. Now, if the iPhone just turns off all of a sudden every 3 days, right? You'd be like, oh, let's go fix the code. Or if you press a button to play music, but instead it records music, you'd be like, wait, there's a bug, right? So I invite people to take a look within. It's like, are you getting triggered? Are you getting into, or do you feel anxious? Because those are all glitches in the operating system of humans. And psychedelics, and by the way, psychedelics is only a part of my healing journey, right? Most of my work is meditating, is singing, is community, is having, learning from talks on forgiveness, on kindness, etc. So, I don't want people to just think, oh, psychedelics is everything. It's not. It's only one, it's an accelerant to everything, but you gotta get it's like the icing on the cake, but you gotta have the cake.
And now we're going to have a song. Now, is this one? What are you going to perform for us, Chris?
We can all sing it together if you guys are up for it. I think it's only appropriate to end with a little Rolling Stones wisdom.
Oh, there you go. People at home, sing along. You don't want me singing with you, Chris, but go ahead.
I think oftentimes we think we want something. I just invite you to understand, to kind of look beneath. Why do you want this? And what's the need underneath it all, right? You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, you just might find you get what you need. What you need. And so I invite you to close your eyes. What do you need? Ask yourself, what do I need? Just a little patience. Yeah. Just a little patience. Breathe. I think we're in such stressful times all the time. The word dis-ease comes from not being at ease. So what are the things that bring you ease, right? Maybe not rushing, not feeling like you have to figure it all out all the time. Giving yourself a little grace. Smiling. When we smile, we actually trigger the brain to release those happy hormones because our brain doesn't know the difference between, we can essentially trick ourselves into feeling those things. And so get out in nature. Call somebody that's encouraging, or encourage somebody. Do something nice for someone. Actually, when we do something nice for someone, we get those happy hormones too, right? So I also have tons of resources on my website, and they're free. Use them, right? I just hope you feel, a bit of clarity, and I hope just we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, before we wrap, give me a little bit of the song you did at Commencement.
The first one or
the first one? The first one. The first one.
When I wake up in... And by the way, that song is a protest song from the 90s.
Okay.
Right? And the reason I picked it is, I think we need a bit of a wake-up call right now.
Well, give it.
Like, I think we're all a little bit asleep to, like, what's really going on in the world. Between inflation, between the wars that are happening, between the mental health crisis. So, when I wake up in the morning and I step outside, I take a deep breath, I get real high, and I scream at the top of my lungs, what's going on? So it's a reminder in the morning, right? Wake up, take a few deep breaths in, meditate a little, maybe go outside a little bit, stretch. When I wake up in the morning, I step outside, I take a deep breath, I get real high, and I scream at the top of my lungs, what's going on? And I said, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, what's going on? And I said, hey, yeah, yeah, hey, yeah, yeah. I said, hey, what's going on? And if you notice, what I just did was I sang a harmony to the original melody. And so sometimes it's nice when we don't do the same thing. But if we can actually listen to each other and find the harmony, it actually creates such a beautiful world. So here's my wish for more harmony in the world. And thank you for sharing this moment.
Well, Chris, I got to, and just one thing here before we go, I didn't think about it till you saying that, was, and I get real high. Any irony there? to the ayahuasca part of this whole thing, the psychedelic?
I think people should aspire to get high sometimes. And, I think of psychedelics as there's a spectrum of, there's cannabis, there's psilocybin, there's ayahuasca, there's a spectrum. And so I think do your research, don't do it recklessly. You wouldn't have surgery in an alley, right? So don't do it in an alley, right? Work with people that are experienced, find a psychedelic assisted therapist, or find a shaman that has a track record of this stuff. And, not everyone's ready for it, but when you are, it's a powerful way to elevate above the noise.
Chris, with 90 seconds left to go, I gotta tell you, who would have thought 13 days ago that you'd be sitting here in the studio and we'd be having this conversation and you'd be playing the ukulele? I thank you so much for coming here and doing this and answering tough questions, hopefully, but hopefully, earnest questions that I wanted to know the answer to.
Well, I've done lots of interviews and there's a reason I'm here.
What is that reason, Chris?
Is I just deeply appreciate A, your persistence, and B, the quality of the questions you asked. Like, you asked me questions that nobody else asked me, and I deeply appreciate that.
Chris?
Because I think the secret to life is the questions you ask.
Oh, there you go.
Because with AI and Google, right, all the answers are out there. We're just not asking the right questions. And so, how about that as a
final analysis? Chris Pan, I'm sure you'll be hearing more from him, chrispan.com. Scott Spears heading for the dugout.
Thank you so much.